Good afternoon, I am Vicky McCullum with the midweek edition of Our City COVID-19 News Show. We will be updating you on the latest information and resources around the COVID-19 pandemic while unpacking deeper issues as they emerge. Today marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day since the annual celebration of the environmental movement began. Sadly, this year's Earth Day is taking place during one of the most widespread and deadly pandemics the world has seen for generations. At the same time, global warming is an ongoing crisis. In the last few years, South Africa has faced the worst droughts and water shortages in generations. We encourage our viewers to get in touch with us. We want to hear from you as we welcome contributions from movements, healthcare providers, and our audience. We want this program to be a two-way flow of information, so please get in touch with us via our social media platforms and our emails. And now for the news. On day 27 of the national lockdown, the current number of confirmed COVID-19 cases stands at 3,465, with 1,055 recoveries and 58 deaths. Police and law enforcement officers were forced to protect supermarkets, spaza shops and trucks delivering food parcels in Macassar after a spate of looting by residents. The ShopRite group said in a statement that its Macassar store was closed early yesterday after they received information that the store would be targeted in a looting attempt. Swift action by private security with the help of the police secured the premises. Meanwhile, police spokesperson Noloyiso Kwekana says a group of community members had looted various spaza shops in the area, resulting in the arrest of a 40-year-old man for looting and a further dozen people, 11 men and a woman, for public violence. The 49 original occupiers of a piece of land in Impolweni, Khayelitsha, watched as police brought an end to an attempted land invasion yesterday. A large group of people arrived and began demarcating plots of land. Police fired rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse dozens of people. Residents who are allowed to occupy the land in terms of an interim order granted by the Cape Town High Court on Friday watched as newcomers fled. MACO member for Human Settlements, Malusi Boy, said the council was allowed to remove any illegal structures erected by people who were not among the original 49 occupiers. The Western Cape should brace itself for a staggering 80,000 COVID-19 cases when the pandemic reaches its peak in the province. Premier Alan Winde has warned. In a briefing yesterday, Winde said health services expected a shortfall of 750 beds in critical care facilities. The Western Cape has experienced 3 waves of transmissions, imported cases, those associated with imported cases, which have declined, and local transmissions, which are rising. Currently, the Western Cape has 1,010 cases out of the national total of 3,465. The latest transmissions have hit hard, especially among essential workers. 17 people have died so far.
The scenarios that have been built show us that we can expect at the peak 80,000 infections, and at that peak we must understand that 90% of those people that are infected are going to be able to deal with this virus by staying at home. But we are also going to have, first of all, a shortfall of 1,000 beds in the acute space and 750 beds in the critical space. But that's what the scenario tells us. Then what happens is the health department goes along and says, well, how are we going to mitigate that? And that's the plan that has been put on the table. And that plan has shown what kind of PPE we've got, what stock holding we have from tests, test kits, and then, of course, even more importantly, the 17 triage centers that have been built at our healthcare facilities, or almost built by the end of the month. They'll be built. That's so we're testing, but they also become capabilities at that peak period, and of course putting in the extra beds. And we've also seen from the presentation that we're going to be able to create even more than the 1,000 shortfall, so we are going to be okay there. But the big risk lies in the 750 beds that are needed at that peak time in the critical care space.
A further 73,180 SANDF soldiers will be deployed to help police in enforcing the national lockdown and protecting the country's borders, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced last night. In a letter to the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, Ramaphosa said they would be on active duty until the 26th of June. DA leader John Steenhuisen said the move did not bode well for the prospect of ending the lockdown. We'll have more on President Ramaphosa's address after the break. For now, it's time for an ad break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. You're still watching the Our City COVID-19 show with me, Vicky McCullum. We will be giving you the latest updates on the COVID-19 pandemic and sharing essential resources and information with you. In an address to the nation last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced an increase in childcare grants as well as other social grants and a new way to distribute food aid. These formed part of the government's 500 billion rand plan to boost the economy. The grants were designed to relieve social distress caused by the lockdown to prevent the spread of COVID-19 infections. He has also allocated 20 billion rand to municipalities in a bid to help communities in distress.
The nationwide lockdown has had a negative impact on the revenue of municipalities at a time when the demands on them are increasing. Additional funding of 20 billion rand will therefore be made available to municipalities for the provision of emergency water supply, increased sanitation for public transport as well, and other facilities. But they'll also be able to provide food and shelter for the homeless. Details will be announced in the adjustment budget tabled by the Minister of Finance. Another significant area that requires massive additional expenditure is the relief of hunger and social distress in our communities across the country. While we have put in place measures to protect the wages of workers in the formal economy and have extended support to small, medium, and micro-sized businesses, millions of South Africans in the informal economy and those without employment are struggling to survive. Poverty and food insecurity coronavirus grant. We will direct 50 billion rand towards relieving the plight of those who are most desperately affected by the coronavirus. This means that child support grant beneficiaries will receive an extra 300 rand in May, and from June to October, they will receive an additional 500 rand each month. All other grant beneficiaries will receive an extra 250 rand per month for the next 6 months. In addition, a special COVID-19 social relief of distress grant of an amount of 350 rand a month for the next 6 months will be paid to individuals who are currently unemployed and who do not receive any other form of social grant or UIF payment. The Department of Social Development will issue the requirements needed to access and the application for this funding. We recognize that food distribution capacity of the government is not adequate to meet the huge need that has arisen since the start of the epidemic. The South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, will within days implement a technology-based solution to roll out food assistance at scale through vouchers and cash transfers to ensure that help does reach those who need it faster and more efficiently. In addition, to fill the immediate need, the Department of Social Development has partnered with the Solidarity Fund, NGOs in our country, and community-based organizations to distribute 250,000 food parcels across the country over the next 2 weeks. We are deeply disturbed by reports of unscrupulous people who are abusing the distribution of food and other assistance for corrupt ends. We will not hesitate to ensure that those involved in such activities face the full might of the law. The coronavirus will lead to many people losing their jobs. An additional 100 billion rand will be set aside for protection of jobs and also to create jobs. Since the declaration of a state of national disaster over a month ago, government has put in place a range of measures to support workers' wages and assist companies in distress. By the end of May, the UIF's special COVID-19 benefit has already paid out 1.6 billion rand, assisting over 37,000 companies and 600,000 workers. 40 billion has been set aside for income support payments for workers whose employers are not able to pay their wages. We continue to provide assistance in the form of loans, grants, and debt restructuring to SMEs, to spaza shop owners, and other informal businesses. The value of this assistance to date is over 100 million for small businesses. The IDC facility to support companies to procure or to manufacture personal protective equipment has been utilized in the past few weeks with finance of 162 million rand approved to date. Other forms of support have been extended to artists, to athletes and technical personnel, as well as to waste pickers and public works participants in the environmental sector. While these measures are providing obvious relief to many companies and workers, it is clear that there is a far greater need across the entire economy. We will therefore be introducing a 200 billion loan guarantee scheme in partnership with the major banks in our country, the National Treasury, and the South African Reserve Bank. This will assist enterprises with operation, and a year will be eligible to participate in the scheme. It is expected that the scheme will support over 700,000 firms and more than 3 million employees through this difficult period.
Community Action Network Tafelsig admin leader Joni Fredericks and her team have started a new project aimed at catering to the needs of pregnant mothers during lockdown. The project, called Baby Can, sees mothers getting a full baby hamper to help ease their financial burden.
Amid protesting and unsettlement in the Tafelsig area, Joni Fredericks, Tafelsig's Community Action Network admin leader, and her team has started a Baby Can network that sees to the needs of pregnant women during lockdown.
So now the thing with our communities is we don't have reserve funds or saving accounts where we can, through the year, put money aside. The minute lockdown was announced, it meant an immediate loss of income. So suddenly there was no time to work for that particular baby essentials. And then another person called, and then another person called, and I realized, but this is a trend. And what really got to me was that normally people in dire need will ask me, Tony, you know what, I need this, that, and the other thing. And then I started receiving calls from people who normally don't need to ask because the woman works and the husband work, and so they normally okay. So I realized this is a trend, and somebody's going to have to step in and do something.
Providing baby essentials with her partner Elizabeth Kane, like baths and clothing, the new baby kit aims to give new moms a sense of pride and dignity when bringing the baby home.
And then this Cape Town Together network was really beautiful in pairing me up with the right person for this. Harriet Kane is a yoga teacher, and she is by profession somebody that I don't even know how you call her, but she's somebody that walked the walk with a pregnant mommy. She's the one that says, breathe. And so Harriet contacted me and she said, Johnny, you know, this is a blessing. Because through my work, I've got this network of new mummies. And immediately within hours, she could collect, we could kit out the first 5 mummies in full. The whole new baby hamper. And then when I arrived in a place at Sea Point, there was so many other things that when we looked around, we realized that we could, apart from the 5 complete hampers for new babies, there were actually enough for about 40 other women.
More than 40 women already helped. Joni appeals to anyone that can make a contribution to work together to ensure that every pregnant woman is taken care of.
And now I'm feverishly working with my partner Harriet. She's already got another load that we need to go pick up. And then I'm just really making an appeal for anybody out there who has new or very good baby clothes or any essentials. Because one of the things that I saw that is really very welcome is the what do you call it, the bachi, the baby. Yeah. And then obviously the bag. It gives a sense of pride for mommy to be able to already be ready before she goes in. Because one of the things that really got to me, immediately when people started talking to me, is I know we are in a particularly bad food crisis. And no woman should have to suffer emotionally because of not being ready for baby. And so all of the ladies that received the babies, the first thing that they said to me is, wow, now I can rest.
Ensuring that everyone in need is taken care of, Frederick says the initiative was set to be Baby Project Lockdown, but has tremendously grown and will be continued. For Our City News, I am Stephanie Piet, Tafelsig.
SOS Children Villages South Africa, as part of an alliance of the world's 6 largest child-focused organizations, the Joining Forces group have called on governments to put concrete measures in place to protect children during the COVID-19 crisis. Helga Jansen-Dober spoke to National Director Patrick Kaluti to find out more.
Good morning. I'm here with Patrick Kolati, who is the National Executive Director for the SOS Children's Village. Good morning, Patrick, and it's a beautiful day wherever you are. Tell us where you are.
Good morning, Helga. Good morning to all the viewers of Cape TV. I'm in Johannesburg at this point. It's beautiful out here, hot outside.
The sky is blue. I hear no traffic jams and no overhead airplanes, so clearly COVID-19 is doing something.
I tell you, it's beautiful.
Yeah, let's jump into it. The SOS Children's Village is part of a global alliance called Joining Forces Alliance. Tell us about the alliance.
Yes, thank you. The alliance is an alliance of child rights focused organizations across the world. The organizations that are part of this alliance are Child Fund Alliance, Plan International, Save the Children, SOS Children's Villages, Terra Des Homes International Federation, and World Vision. So that basically is a group of organizations that came together to say, how do we raise awareness about child rights issues during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, so what, reading through your statement, there are some very particular concerns which the Alliance have around how crisis and war affect the development of children. What are those concerns, and how can a virus affect the development of children?
Look, the narrative so far, or at the beginning of the crisis, was that children are not as much affected by the coronavirus, particularly from the public health perspective. But what we have been finding is that that is not always accurate, because you've got millions in fact, billions of poor children right across the world. And a lot of them have problems with compromised immune systems because of poverty, because of lack of nutrition. Some of them are stunting, have problems with growth. A lot of them have pre-existing conditions which are conducive to this coronavirus and so on. Some of them, because of the socio-economic conditions of informal settlements, congestions, overpopulation where they are staying, poverty, lack of proper eating processes, a lot of them are affected by the virus. The other issue relates to the fact that from the schooling point of view, a lot of poor children do not have the kind of access that others have. For an example, we're talking about online education. A lot of them cannot have data, cannot have iPads, laptops, and all those kinds of things, and they are excluded. A lot of them, because of the conditions in which they live, they cannot self-isolate. They cannot implement social distancing. It's just an impossible situation. And also another issue here is that, as you've heard in the news and elsewhere, that during this lockdown period, there's increase of violence, gender-based violence. And a lot of times we forget that there are children who are also affected by that. When the adults are fighting, normally the children get emotionally bruised. They sometimes get physically harmed. And a lot of them are forced to leave the home because of this problem.
Patrick, I want to come back to the issue around the specifics of the concern. I read in the statement also that the danger, particularly with regard to sustained education, is also a concern. Explain to our viewers why the concern around education. Because I know a lot of parents are, of course, concerned.
Yes. You see, education is a big issue. You've got over 1.5 billion children around the world that are now outside of the schooling system. And a lot of those children were provided meals and schooling through that educational outlet. Now, so for example, the likelihood is that, and in fact, this comes from research and findings from previous situations of war, where children were forced out of school. They never returned back to school. That's a big concern. And secondly, whilst they are still at home, because they normally do not have the kind of access that is required to be able to do online education, they don't have parents that can actually look after them and to supervise their homework. For example, here at home, we've got children where, now and then you've got to connect with the teachers, you've got to have the children supervised as a parent and so on. A lot of the children do not, in some of the poor areas, rural areas, do not have that kind of benefit. And so because of this, they're likely to let go of education and forever. So what we're saying as this alliance, in fact, there are a number of points. There needs to be a coordinated approach by governments to work with different stakeholders, including the United Nations system, World Health Organizations, so that there is a uniform approach to this thing.
Because of course, the danger is, Patrick, that we will just perpetuate cycles of inequality and generational poverty if we don't make sure that children, particularly girl children, stay in school.
Exactly. You must remember, particularly around girl children, is that they are also exposed to things like sexual violence whilst they're at home, in the communities, and then if they are not at school and likely to leave school early, that is going to be a serious a violation of their rights and their ability to grow and become adults who are able to be productive. And this is where there has to be a particular thought about what do we do with those ones, those children, many of them, who cannot be able to afford the kind of online education that we're talking about under the conditions of lockdown.
We're again dividing society if we don't deal with this. And I think, Patrick, to bring it back home, yesterday's announcement by the president, what is the view of the SOS Children's Village with regard to the announcement on the increase of child support grants?
Look, I think the government is trying their level best to actually alleviate the socio-economic conditions that have befallen all of us because of this problem. And we welcome the interventions that they've made, particularly around the increases of the grants, child's grants, and even some of the other grants. Because you see this whole thing of the COVID-19 has exposed deep levels of inequalities in our country. And it is also providing an opportunity for us to address those perpetually. So we welcome what the president said last night. We are just hoping that the process of implementation would be clarified and explained by the ministers. And secondly, that when the application of those policies is done, there is no corruption, there is no embezzling of money, just like we've heard about officials taking away food parcels from the poor. We want that to be stopped so that the poor people who deserve what the government is doing can be able to access it without any corruption involved.
Patrick, thank you very much for your input. I wish you and the SOS Children's Villages all the best during this time. I'm sure that the villages are keeping our children safe. So all the best to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'd like to encourage people to visit our website, which is www.sossouthafrica.org.za. Everybody who wants to support the work that we're doing to provide for the children in the villages and elsewhere is welcome to support us either financially or in any other support way, but they need to contact us. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
We're taking a short ad break. When we come back, Octavia and Lovu will have the latest on social media.
Welcome back. Before the ad break, we had Vicky McCallan with the latest news. Climate change is real. With every new crisis, we realize that we are pushing ourselves and our planet one step closer to disaster on an unprecedented scale. We are depleting our national resources, our wildlife and forest. 2019 witnessed huge forest fires in the Amazon and Australia, resulting in the loss of millions of hectares of forest and almost 1 billion wild animals. The situation is critical and calls for our utmost focus. Together we can reverse climate change, but only if we act now. This is a video produced by Infinity Windows.
Trouble is her only friend, and he's back again. Makes her body older than it really is. And she says it's high time she went away. No one's got much to say in this town. Trouble is the only way is down, down, down. As strong as you were, tender you go. I'm watching you breathing for the last time. A song for your heart, but when it is quiet, I know what it means. I'll carry you home. As strong as you are, tender you go. I'm watching you breathing for the last time. A song I'll carry you home.
The following video was submitted by one of our viewers, Ashwell Nodia. If you want to be like Ashwell, you can email your video at ourcityct@capetowntv.org. Please make sure that we are able to hear and see what you are saying, and the video should not be longer than a minute and a half.
Jordan, mis jy die skool?
Ja, daddy. Ek mis daddy die werk en die visvang.
Ek mis dit verskriklik baie vir al my kollegas en ek mis die visvang ook.
En my borskas se corona, my jakkie klop, klop, klop. Ek moet skool toe gaan met my vinger op my lip. Vinger op my lip en ek moet skool toe gaan.
In my borskas sit corona en ek wil see toe gaan. Ek wil see toe gaan met my vinger op my lip. Vinger op my lip en ek wil vis gaan vang.
Dit is vervelend by die huis. Wanneer is voorbij? 21 is nog te lang. Nog te lang. Nog te lang. Wanneer is dit nou voorbij? Oopie, sê my nou. Sê my nou vir my. Sê my nou. Sê my nou.
In my borskas sit corona.
My jakkie klop, klop.
And now for social media. Share your thoughts with us on Facebook, we are Our City CT, and on Twitter at Our City CT. This is a time that we need to come together as a nation. These are the popular hashtags on Twitter today. Hashtag Earth Day is the 50th Earth Day today, which for the first time in history is becoming recognized in purely digital form. Head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, said that COVID-19 crisis has an unprecedented wake-up call and that global citizens should demand a healthy and resilient future for people and planet. Hashtag 350. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced of a grant for unemployed citizens has been greeted with joy by some and criticism by others. But we need to think about those without identified documents who won't be able to access the grant. If you want to be a part of this conversation, you can do so by visiting our Facebook page using the hashtag #CTVCOVIDShow. After our break, we'll be crossing over to Vicky McCullen, who will share information on resources and places of safety that you can use during this period. Stay with us.
The organisation has launched an urgent COVID-19 pet food appeal to Cape Town-based manufacturers to donate their surplus edible pet food, which will then be distributed where it is needed most. You can get involved by contacting them on 021 785 4482 or email them tears@tearsorg.za. A Cape Town-based school feeding organisation is putting food on the table for thousands of poor households during the lockdown. The Peninsula School Feeding Association is donating 9,000 food parcels to families in the Greater Cape Town area. You can get involved by contacting 021 447 6020 or email info@psfa.org.za. For those battling with substance abuse, call the numbers on the screen now. Please access assistance from the following community support groups, most of whom are offering online meetings. That's all we have for you today, but if you have something to say, we want to hear from you. Send your comments, news and questions to us via Facebook at Our City CT, on Twitter at Our City CT, or get in touch with us on email ourcity@capetowntv.org. This is a time that we need to come together as a nation, so if you're not sure about something, send us your questions and we'll try to find the answers for you. You can also call us on 021 448 0448. From me, Vicky McCullum and Octavia Ndlovu, goodbye.